Good afternoon, namaskar. Welcome back from lunch, and it's great to see such energy in the room. All of that chatter made me feel relieved that you weren't going to fall asleep. This is a very special forum. I've attended lots of conferences over the years that I've been in consulting, and it's rare to see such an incredibly dynamic and energetic bunch, and you can almost feel the energy. Am I right? And you can sense Queensland being propelled into its best future. So it's very exciting to be part of this. Today I'm here not as a futurist, but I'm here as a storyteller. And I think all great communication is about telling stories. And that's what I intend to do. And today my story is about India and about falling in love with India. And I hope that by sharing that story, there'll be some resonance about how to fall in love with Queensland and how to encourage more people to fall in love with Queensland and how to convert them from a dream destination to actually coming here and experiencing the place. Before I start and wax lyrical about India, how many people have visited India? Can I have a show of hands? Not bad, but I think we might need a destination eye. Let's see. For those of you who haven't been to India, we're just going to have a virtual Indian moment. And for the next 3 minutes, let's drift off into a magical place. Cam, can you play the video, please?
First time in India?
Nein, दूसरी बार.
India, incredible India.
I always like playing that at the beginning of a presentation because it explains what I've learnt in India. My mother's still quite upset. She lives in Adelaide, and every time I do a head wobble, she kind of tuts and gets annoyed. But in 2004, India created quite a shift in my world order. I was based in Manhattan at the time. I was the president of a consulting business, working with some of the best organisations and brands around the world, getting paid way too much money. And all of a sudden, I had a life change of quite a big order, and I added travel writer to my professional expertise. So all of a sudden, my black and white world of Manhattan and New York looked dull compared to the vivid life of India. And when I left India, I describe it to friends as like someone's turned the volume down and flicked the switch from colour to black and white. So India grabbed my imagination, not only as a wonderful culture to learn about, but also because in lots of ways it's a country of the future. My hometown is Bangalore. Nehru described that as the city of the future. So it's a very exhilarating time to be in India as a futurist as well. What I was doing in New York was running a consulting firm that specialised in applied futurism. So Faith Popcorn was the lady who started the company. It's called Brain Reserve. And Faith was called the Nostradamus of marketing. So she identified consumer trends and then talked to organisations about how to create brands and products to capitalise on those trends. So some of the consulting assignments we did, I've featured some of my favourite ones: the future of food, the future of pain, the future of sleep, the future of women. And I think probably the one you're most interested in is the future of travel. And we got that assignment on September the 12th, 2001. And you can imagine on that day, waking up in Manhattan, the world order changed. And British Airways were quite concerned both what that meant, what did that event do for the impact of the future of travel. So that was the assignment we immersed ourselves in for some months and delivered the report. Today I'm really lucky because both my passion for travel and also my skill as a futurist and branding expert come together. And so that's what we're going to spend some time today talking about. And on a personal, it is a personal story, it's a love story. So this is the first time I'm sharing that with such a large audience. So here we go on the personal story. I exchange shoes like I'm wearing today, if you can see, and I changed those into hiking boots. And I didn't write a book called Wild, but maybe that was the book I should have written. But a passion for mountains was the thing that led me to India. So it started pretty gently on the Larapinta Trail with a hike and a little walk up Mount Sonder. I don't know quite how they call that a mountain. And then I got a little bit more brave and I did Cradle Mountain. And then in 2003, I summited Mount Kilimanjaro, which is no mean effort, I must say. Only 15% of people who attempt killing make the top. And I went with a guy called Wally Berg, and Wally guides the 7 summits. And at that stage, he said, "Great, Fiona, you've bagged the first one. Why don't you do all 7 with me?" And the big hurdle, has anyone in here gone to climbed Everest? We'd know about it by now, wouldn't we? Has anyone gone to Everest Base Camp? Great. And that's quite a hike, isn't it? And quite a challenge in itself. So the reason I wanted to go to Everest was to see whether I could manage the icefall, which is the most treacherous part of that journey, when you put crampons on and you go across ladders looking dangerously down the crevasse. I went to see this movie the other day and I thought, my goodness, what on earth was I ever thinking? But in 2004, there I was at Everest Base Camp, and I had a 3.5-week hike. And what that did was I was totally, it was a digital blackout, I think it's called these days. And it was this quiet meditation about the kind of life I would like to lead. And that life really wasn't situated in Manhattan doing what I'd done for 20 years. And I thought there was change afoot, but I didn't quite know what it was going to be. Part of that journey, after the trip into Everest, is I was going back to New York, and Dhaka in Bangladesh had a building that I wanted to see. And this is the National Assembly building. It was the last building that Louis Kahn, a fantastic architect, had done. And, you know, on a map it looked like half a fingernail. And I thought, oh, look, I'll just pop in there before I go back to work. And the only way of getting to Dakar from Kathmandu was to go via Calcutta. And so I was having less than 24 hours in Calcutta. And I was smart enough, I could figure out the hotel. I stayed at kind of the Raffles equivalent. It's called the Grand. It's an Oberoi property. And I was very excited to have a bed and even more excited to have a bathroom after having 3.5 weeks without one. So, you know, I had a pretty low bar about being excited about the accommodation. But what I knew is that I wanted to eat great Bengali food. One night. So after spending an inordinate amount of time in the bathroom, washing my hair half a dozen times, I walked down and I asked the concierge for a recommendation of where to eat good Bengali food. And he said, "Ah, madam, we have an excellent Thai restaurant." I said, no, I don't want to eat Thai. I'm in Calcutta. I want to have great Bengali food. And he looked nervous. And he couldn't answer me. And, you know, there was some sort of lame list which included McDonald's and pizza places and things like that. But what I realised is that he'd had no experience at eating in restaurants. He was lucky if he was earning $100 a month. The best food he'd ever had was cooked by his mum. Probably is the best food in Calcutta. But he couldn't answer my question. So, you know, I was very limited with time. I had one night, I needed a great recommendation. What did I do? And I didn't want to wade through thousands of people's reviews and opinions. I just wanted the one perfect place. So I went into the bookshop and I met a lady who worked in the bookshop, and I said, "Look, do you have a local guide?" And she waved me at a wall of big fat books. You know the brand I'm talking about? And I said, no, that's not what I've got in mind. You know, I'm here for one night. I want really great food, ideally a glass of wine in a lovely atmosphere. And she wrote down the name. See that little note? I've still got that piece of paper. I carry it around with me because it reminds me of where the idea came from. And that was her writing of the places that I should go to for dinner. And I did. And I started to fall in love. And what happened is, because she was such a good source of knowledge, I asked her what I should do the next day. And I continued to fall in love with this incredible city. So here are some pictures of me falling in love. This is the Indian coffee co-op, the Indian coffee house. Then it's a great guy pouring chai. And then I think probably the moment which did it for me was dawn on the Ganga with the Hooghly River in Calcutta and going to visit the flower market. So all of a sudden, this little 24-hour journey turned into a really long-term love affair. And the shopping helped as well. It has some of the best textiles in the world. And here's Mr. Kapildas, who's a third-generation silversmith who does all of the trophies for the polo events around the world. He's an extraordinary character. And I started to fall in love with everything that India had on offer: the craftsmanship, the magic, the spirituality, the colour, and the taste. And that journey really changed things for me, because I started understanding what it was. It felt as exhilarating as falling in love with a person. I'd fallen in love with a destination. So this is what's in my books that I talk about, you know, how exciting I find falling in love with a place. And last night I started falling in love with Townsville, and I'm going to share with you how I do it and what I found. But what happened for me in 2004 is, on that journey back from Dakar to New York, I wrote a business plan and brand plan. That was on the flight to London, had a chat with a girlfriend of mine who said, "You're crazy, and go for it." And I wrote my resignation letter on the flight back to New York. And by November, I was living in India, knowing nobody, and I'd never written anything other than a PowerPoint deck. So I fell in love, I moved countries, I created a brand, and I started a small artisanal business, a travel business. And luckily, if you have a look at that chart closely, you'll see I got there in 2004, and we've had double-digit growth in Indian tourism ever since. So this is what I started my brand with, which were it's a very old-fashioned idea to have a handbook. And I'd done a lot of research, and I was a futurist, and I'd done a lot of technology. I'd looked after the Microsoft business, digital, IBM, and I was steeped in a world of online and digital. But I chose to I tried to future-proof the content. I wanted to be paid for my content and my knowledge, and I wanted to future-proof the information. So I created beautiful objects. Now, there is one of these beautiful objects on every table in here, and if you search on the table, there is a heart under a notepad, maybe, under a bottle of water. Whoever finds that heart, you get to keep the book. So I know it's not an Apple Watch, but there's a lot of these books. So these books I describe as handbooks for luxury vagabonds, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what luxury vagabonds mean. But it took me a while. I arrived in November 2004, and I launched the first book on February the 14th in 2007. But since then, they've got quite a cult following. They've been called the standard bearer of India guides. They are the only luxury guides for the country. And Vanity Fair in England has got the toughest travel editor in the world, Victoria Mather. She's astoundingly fabulous. She makes Annie Wintour look mild at Vogue. And Victoria found me through the books, and she also launched the book for me at home in London. So the books really did all the work for me. I didn't have to do too much about the rest of my career and what followed. But they are seen now as the standard bearer and somewhat the Bible for travel for India. And because of that, I then, editors from magazines and also producers from TV stations come to me and get me to write about India. So for Condé Nast Traveller in the UK, I do their hot list and their gold list, and I do feature stories on India. I work for Departures in the States. I've done work with Qantas and with Susan at the Weekend Australian. So there's a lot of work. Discovery TV, we did a series on beaches, and I do quite a bit with some of the best blogs and travel sites as well. And I've also extended into services. The books are a delicious object. They're not a brilliant commercial decision. So I now offer concierge services, and this is really about creating bespoke advice. So it's, totally tailored, it's fast, it's specific, and I do that over the phone and on email. And I've just started in the last 18 months creating journeys. So I actually put together entire journeys, and then I deliver them working with one of India's best on-the-ground operators. So that's an exciting development for me. So what I'm going to do is talk about the 6 brand beliefs. I think it's a very brave thing when you leave the world of consulting and you actually start your own business. It's your money on the line, it's your investment, it's what you do. It's quite a vulnerable thing, I think, to put yourself in this place to create it. And you need to be fairly have strong conviction about what you believe in. And I was excited when I watched Dwayne's presentation from last year and then also again yesterday, because I think I've done a lot of the work around what my promise is and how I deliver that. So in my world, I talk about ideas, and this is what I'm going to share. So my brand idea, and it was always this, was all around authenticity. And it hasn't changed. So from that very early concept back in 2004 to standing here, I still believe in that with great passion. Because today we can travel, we can go anywhere to see anything without moving. We can just sit on our laptops, sit on our phones and see everything and see everyone and talk to everyone and experience everything. So if you're going to actually travel, it better be an authentic experience, and it better be something more than simply just glimpsing a site or having just a passive experience. It has to deliver that wow factor. I have to be able to get a wow on my social media. And the way to do that is by offering authentic experiences. And I raise the bar on what authenticity means, because I think that with Queensland, we've got a way to go on really delivering authentic. So the Times of India said, this is love travel's all about, the discerning traveller who wants authenticity. Discerning is my code word for, a little bit fussy. It probably means everyone in this room. You're no longer an 18-year-old backpacker with limitless time. And we're going to talk a little bit about time as currency coming up. I was thrilled with this review from Susan. It looks and feels like a book of secrets. All the savvy inside knowledge is there. And she uses that great word. It's the knowledge that a traveller craves. My brand is all about travel. It's not about tourism. My brand is all about travel. It's not about tourism. I am passionate about experiences, not sightseeing. So I enjoyed Sarah's rant. Is Sarah still here? Sarah's rant yesterday about free Wi-Fi. I totally back her up on that. I'm obsessed by it. My rant is about the word sightseeing. I hate it. I think it should be banned. I think it's so last century. So I think it's a nonsense. So for me, I want to have experiences. So if I go and see, this is Nagaur Fort. It's an incredible place. It dates back to the 4th century. The buildings are actually from the 11th century, Rajput and Mughal styles. It's halfway between Jodhpur and Jaipur. It's an incredible place. But the way to see Nagaur is not to go passively and see it as a bunch of old buildings and kind of have a look at the restoration done by Getty and by Lady Hamlin and by Babji the Maharaja. The way to go to it is to go to Babji's private party. He has a Sufi festival there every year. It goes for 3 days. And you have the most extraordinary music, yoga sessions, historians like Willie Dalrymple talking, and you totally become immersed in the Sufi spirit and the Sufi tradition. And nobody has that experience without changing, and changing at a pretty deep and personal level. So I understand that we can't always deliver experiences of that scale, but what we can do is no longer have passive experiences, passive sightseeing. This is at the Anoki Block Printing Museum in Jaipur. What I love about it is, and I'm a textile junkie, I adore it. But what is really exciting about this museum is you actually block print working with a master craftsman. So that hands-on experience is the thing that you take away and you remember. It's not the sights that you see. So how I do this is I gather love stories. So when you look at the books, and again, I'm not a journalist, I've had no formal writing, but I simply tell stories about the people and the places that I've met. And I think being an Australian helps, I'm very happy taking advice from taxi drivers or princesses, and I kind of treat them the same. Sort of upsets princesses at times. But I really am greedy, and you'll have noticed that I think, the people I've spoken to in the last 36 hours, I was greedy for information about how to fall in love with Townsville. And I get the information, I talk to lots of people, and they're the ones who share their love stories with me, and then I go and visit them, and then I shamelessly decide whether it gets in or not. It's a totally biased point of view on how to fall in love with a destination. What I want to create is I want my readers, my clients, my customers, the people who follow me online, I want them to have a local experience. A local, authentic experience, not a tourist experience. So this is my friend Hema. She's a brilliant textile designer, and you can go to Hema's home in Bombay. And note, in India we say Bombay, we write Mumbai. But we still have the Bombay Stock Exchange, we still have the Bombay Yacht Club, so we're proud of Bombay. So this is, Hema's in my book, and it's about, yeah, sure, go and buy a shawl if you want to, but it's about getting inside her house. And hearing and seeing and talking with her about how she lives in this incredible city of all of Australia's population fits into the city of Bombay. So my abduction technique. Now this I don't often share with people, so please don't steal it. So what I do is I pretend that I'm going to take you away for 10 years. Now we could go to Mars, given that they've got water and Matt Damon's there and prepared it for us. There's many places we could go, but we go away for 10 years. And let's leave Townsville together. So we disappear off and then we come back, and I'll let you go and visit family and friends. But what I'm asking you is, where exactly do you go back to? After 10 years away from your place, where exactly do you go back to? I want to know which blade of grass you stand on and watch sunset. I want to know which pub you go to, and I want to know exactly, do you have the Townsville Bitter or do you have a 4X? You know, what do you actually really do after 10 years away? And what are the places that have that ability to move you and have that passion inside of you? And I promise it works. So here's what I discovered when I was doing my Love Townsville work yesterday. Brett, are you here, Brett? So you told me about mud crabs at Dynasty. So that would make my absolute list, and if a few more people sort of told me that Dynasty is the place, both cab drivers said you were right. So great local seafood. A nope from the Punjab, my taxi driver, who I spent an hour with yesterday, he told me that the Ross Island pub, one of the oldest in town, was the best place for a beer. And this morning Scott took me to the best breakfast place in town because of the view and the corn cakes. So you can almost see how I write the delicious chapter. Now, just because Brett tells me that Dynasty is the answer doesn't mean I believe it, but it means that it gets me to the heart of what makes Townsville tick pretty quickly. So slowly but slowly I start building all of the content that you see in the books, and then content forms a story about what I write for magazines and what I do for TV stations and what I do online and all the other things. But creating that love story, filling in the Love Queensland book, is how I create that deep knowledge. Everyone assumes I live in all the places that I've written about, so that's kind of a nice thumbs up. So I have an obsession for the hyperlocal. I really want to know what makes the destination absolutely unique. What is it that I can only get here? What is it that Townsville gives me that I can't get in Thailand, in Bali, in Fiji, in New Zealand, in Hawaii? What is it that you give me that's really local? What makes it worth me travelling? Giving me nice weather and a beach does not cut it. So I was very excited to see the Reef campaign yesterday. I'm really excited about the Indigenous work. I want to up the ante about what is it that I can only get that's truly local. So yesterday I fell in love with a man called Luke. I get to fall in love a lot, it's good fun. Luke runs a market called Precinct. Does anyone know that place in Townsville? And he is absolutely obsessed with local. So this is the map behind his cash register, and he's standing in front of pineapples that come from Rolling Stone, which I thought was a pretty good name. He tried to sell me chai honey and chili honey made here in Townsville. We had bananas from Mission Beach. I loved that those bananas were picked in the morning and were on sale in his shop in the afternoon. Truly local. I loved having the conversation with him about where's the best food in town, which restaurants is he supplying, who are the smartest chefs using the local produce. And this creates the food and beverage story that Queensland is messing up a bit on. You know, we heard that in the research yesterday. Our produce is an exciting story, and the way that we deliver it is exciting. And I was really fascinated to learn there is no food tourism products yet developed in Townsville, and there was a paddock to plate industry trip. How fabulous would that be to actually start having real experiences and seeing that produce? And, you know, we only have to have a look at, you know, what's on television on SBS nearly every night. It's food programs all of the time. So getting that right is a pretty important part of the mix with travel. My obsession for the hyperlocal also, it's in the detail. What is the scent of Queensland? Is it really frangipanis? And Dwayne, you're probably in the room, and I know that you want it to be frangipanis. But the answer is that it's cookies. It's the Cooktown orchid. It's our flower. It's our state flower, and it's most fragrant at night. That's the smell of Queensland. So when I talk about hyperlocal, I mean, it's real, it's tangible, and it's really like unique and important. This is a brand called Main Beach. It's an Australian brand, and I think they're doing a really good job. They've got products from Lord Howe, from Kangaroo Island, and I think they're really kind of setting a new standard in terms of the hyperlocal. So while I'm talking about smell and aroma, I want to talk about my design idea. So this is my third brand belief, so it's sensuality. So when I was creating Love Travel, I'd done a lot of brand consulting work around this with clients over the years. So what we knew is that the more senses that a brand appeals to, the more successful it's going to be, the more tighter bond that a consumer will have with your brand. So Millward Brown did a great study which said, you know, if you engage more than one sense, your brand effectiveness goes up 300%. Smell was very powerful. At Nike, we did research. We looked at new products, new shoes, in a scent-free room, and we looked at those same shoes in a room that we controlled the aroma. We got $10 more per shoe when we put it into the aroma-filled room. Barclays in England, they put coffee into their banks. They were too mean to serve coffee. They just did the coffee aroma. And they had a lift in traffic by 10% and a lift in sales and all their awareness factors. So scent is a really important thing. So I think what you'll see with the books that are on the table, and if you touch them and feel them and smell them, is I wanted you to feel you'd stepped into India as soon as you were involved in those books. Now, did I succeed? Has anyone smelt it? So I couldn't work with graphic designers. You know, I'd spent a lifetime of working with creative people, but they were too stuck in what luxury travel meant. You know, they wanted to do things with gold embossing and other nonsense. And I said, no, no, no. The future of luxury is handmade. So the future of luxury is handmade, and that's really, really important. So I ended up working with fashion designers to create my brand, and it's something I still do to this day. I've got a new book coming out shortly called Made in Calcutta, and I'm working with India's most successful designer, a young woman called Anita Arora of the brand Pero, and we're doing completely handcrafted books together, including the title will be hand embroidered. So this sensuality is a real winner. The FT magazine in the UK has this like really amazing magazine called How to Spend It, and they're incredibly fussy. And Mark, who's like probably the top fusspot, he called them cherishable guides, and it was because of the way that they were created. It was the fact that they were handmade. Each piece of paper is handmade and it hangs up to dry. And I was terrified when I went to actually the production unit that I was going to see a whole bunch of 5-year-olds making the paper. Lucky they were adults. So I'm very careful on how we get things made. I'm concerned about ethical treatment, about how we create our books. The fabric is hand woven, that you're touching both on the covers and in the pouches. And it's a pretty important thing for me to protect and nurture craft. Right, the fourth idea I want to talk about is my content idea, which is intimacy. And I really wanted my style to be like I was writing you a letter. I wanted Leonie to think that I was saying, hey, look, I can't be in Rajasthan when you're there, but this is exactly what you need. And so you'll see that in the style and how I've written it, it's exactly that. It really is a letter to a dear friend. And I knew that from the start, and maybe it was the only way I knew how to communicate. But what's happened is an avalanche of friends and contacts, because they really do think I'm their friend. So this is a quote by Heidi Swanson, who talks about, you know, it's like having a friend by your side. Heidi's a very successful Californian blogger and cook and food person. The Age in Melbourne talked about like having secrets whispered in your ear by a friend. So I'm really pleased when outside people decide that that's exactly how the content flows. And what happens because of that intimacy, people, without me doing anything, give me wow factor coverage. So these are just some images of people making my brand the hero of their travel experience. So we have Love Jaipur poolside, the champagne slightly taking the emphasis off the brand. Here's some people's posts on Facebook that I found of in situ And Instagram, I just went and did a workshop a little while ago by a woman who's got 154,000 followers. So I've promised her, I get back to India on Monday, and I promised her I'd start Instagramming. This is other people's Instagram feeds about my brand. So now I want to move on to the target idea and this lovely word, lovely phrase, luxury vagabond. I used to run a naming practice, so if I can't get brand names right, you should shoot me. So luxury vagabond, there's two elements to it, one of which is about the target audience and mixing things up, and the second is about a new currency to think about target audiences. Because I think particularly in travel, we get stuck in some old thinking about kind of defining people by how much they spend. So first of all, mixing it up. We all can wear Gap t-shirts and Chanel jackets. Or maybe we all can't afford to wear Chanel jackets, I don't have one, but we can mix things up. We have the ability of staying in a palace and drinking chai. We have the ability of staying here at this property, but still going out and having fish and chips on the beach. We've got this essence inside all of us about a skill to mix it up. It doesn't mean we can only do down market. It doesn't mean that we only will do an upmarket bubble. It is this kind of tension about mixing it up that makes us who we are. And I think that's with everybody. And what I decided is that I would let the user, the consumer, decide what they wanted to spend their money on. I wouldn't decide for them. So this is luxury vagabond sleeping. The image on the right, the yellowish image, is the Lake Palace Hotel with the flute player, and you only know that there's a flute player there every afternoon. He serenades the sunset in. You only know that if you've gone there. This is not travel writing by Google. If I haven't gone and done it, it doesn't make it. So that's $1,000 Australian a night. The other image, the pink image, is a guest house, a family-run guest house called 47 Jobnabag. That's under $100 a night. They're both fabulous. They don't make it into my curated guide of a destination if they're not both fabulous. And I absolutely guarantee that anyone in this room would be equally happy at both. But I let you decide what you spend your money on. The best way to see Bombay is from the water. Bombay was a fishing village. It's how everyone's always arrived in that city. And it is phenomenally exciting to arrive at the gateway of India by boat. But again, I leave it up to you. Charter a yacht, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars, or jump on a local ferry for under $1. They're both fantastic experiences, and again, equally happy doing both. You choose, you let the consumer choose. This is real photos of my books in use, and you can kind of see, there's one style of travelling, probably, a private jet, and then the other one's a local train. Totally happy. Money is not the currency that I thought about. For me, the currency was time. I curate based on time. Time is the most valuable commodity. I mean, seeing everyone here for 2 days and seeing that incredible presence from government and all of those ministers committing time really meant something, I think, to everyone here in the audience about how serious they're taking tourism and the potential. I think what I am valuing, and maybe it's as I'm getting older and smarter, time is the only thing that really matters. So my target audience are time poor. They want to maximise great experiences and minimise bad ones. And I think we heard that very loudly and clearly with the TripAdvisor research about people's holiday time is shrinking and how they plan and what they do is changing, but time is important. So I curate experiences and I totally am in touch with Traveller's Badge. It's not enough to go to the Galapagos Island, sightseeing. You want to go on Sorcerer, you want to go on the Darwin expedition boat that's kind of looking at the discovery of new human species. That's the currency that's being traded, that's the wow factor, that's what's getting talked about in all of the travel magazines. Give me authenticity, give me meaning, give me exclusive experiences, get me away from a pack of other tourists. So I get wow, that's what Love Travel delivers all of the time. In terms of like a futurist, travel, there's, a couple of things at play. We all live, like one of the future forces that I talk about is fast, faster and fastest. This is a fantastic book written by James Gleick. And he talks about, when we use a microwave, we no longer press 60 seconds, we press 55 because it's faster than moving our finger. We have boiling water on tap. We live in a society that speed really matters. And we've got all of these services. We heard yesterday about the Apple Watch letting us check into rooms. All of that's real. 24-hour cycles, 24-hour spas being open, check-ins that work 24 hours, all of that stuff. A huge growth in time-saving services and anything that's going to make you feel good more of the time. Even fast divorces. Have you seen that? Hotels promising a divorce in a weekend? Amazing. So there's a whole bunch of fast examples. But for every future force, there is an equal and opposite force at play. So we have the slow future of travel. And I am firmly now a slow travel advocate. So this is Pico Iyer's latest book. It's called The Art of Stillness. And he talks about going into the digital black hole, the void, where we pay for silence and stillness. Here are two of my favourite images. The first is a place called 360 Leti. You catch a 7-hour train followed by a 10-hour car journey on the most terrifying roads you can imagine, hairpin bends. And after the 10-hour road journey, you then hike for an hour. And you get to this incredibly remote place. And believe me, finding remote in India is challenging with 1.3 billion people. And there you are, looking at the majesty of the Himalayan mountain range, no mobile phones anywhere in sight, absolutely no cell coverage, and it is extraordinary. It's one of the few relay and shadow properties in India. It's got everyone that knows about it going there. And I'm not allowed to talk about their client list. So it's an extraordinary place. That's the kind of place and magic that I like when I think about the future of travel. The place underneath is my home, north of Sydney. It's called the Writer's Retreat at Hardy's Bay, and it's totally about stillness and quiet. So certainly I'm a little bit biased, but I'll do fast stuff as well, but it's nice to mix it up. The next idea I want to talk about is conscious travel. My logo, which you'll see on the books and on my business cards, is a mudra. So it's a symbol from India, and it's the symbol for giving with love. And I'm very aware that I need to contribute back to the society, and I think we all do that. When we travel to places that are different from our own, they raise questions about what's fair and what's not, what's going on with poverty, and what are some of the challenges that a country like India faces. So what I do, and my way of giving back, and I think I've always done this throughout my career, is to use my skills and those of a marketing and branding person and actually highlight and drive traffic to the organisations that support conscious travel. So you'll see all the way through the books a little logo highlighting conscious organisations. So whether that's an environmental guide who takes you down the river, the Yamuna in Delhi, telling you about environmental degradation and making you aware of that, or whether it's a cafe in Agra, which is run by acid victim women who have been subject to acid attacks, and they work in a cafe. I want traffic in those places. I want those issues highlighted, so I make it a really big deal in the travel content that I create. And I talk about the books, but that flows out into all other forms of highlighting conscious travel. Oh, so there's the logo, which is the mudra, and it appears all the way through the books. This is a Share the Love. Now, who was I talking with about Share the Love last night and said, please holler? So here we have the Share the Love moment. This is when I tackle head-on some of the issues that you'll face going to India, and I give you very specific advice on how to deal with those challenges and organise really reputable organisations that you can make a difference to. Here is the Jaipur Foot, which is an incredible organisation, and also the Help in Suffering, which is the animal organisation. And I also put my money where my mouth is, and I contribute 10% of the profits back into social good. Because we really don't make any profits out of the books, I just do what I feel good about. So, It's a nice way of being. And recently, the things that I've been involved in was a sustainable livelihood program for women in Bangalore, where they're learning block printing at a place called Tarragini. And then another great project, I've been working on a book about Calcutta, and I went to Asia's largest brothel, Asia's largest prostitution area, 13,000 prostitutes working in an area in Calcutta. And a lot of those women who work there have been trafficked as young girls. I mean, it's a terrifying situation. And by 36, they're no longer able to earn an income and they're just tossed out onto the streets. So there's an initiative called Missing, which is to raise awareness and to raise funds for those women. And so I've supported the Missing cause. So I feel it's important to do it. And I don't do it in a heavy-handed way, but it's part of the books and it's part of my brand essence. And I think it's an interesting challenge when you look at Australia. We can celebrate the Indigenous culture, and it's great and right that we do so. And it's exciting to talk about the oldest living culture, but we also be pretty aware of some of the issues like on Palm Island, and we need to also, know what are the programs in place that allow us to give back and to create equity. And I think I'm doing okay for time. This is the last idea to share, and it's something that I'm playing with, so I'm almost testing it out. It's a very personal insight. It's my aspirational idea around purposeful travel. And what I've learnt after being in travel now for a long time, and I'm sure everyone in this room already knows this, travel is actually about a journey inside. That's what great travel does, and that's why it's important to do it. And this is a picture from that dreadful movie, Eat, Read, Love, which I'm just annoyed that I didn't write that book. So what I think India does is it holds up a mirror to yourself and it takes you on a journey inside yourself about what you believe and what you don't believe. And I remember being with a couple in a car going through Bombay during the day, and we drove through Dharavi, Asia's largest slum. And the man looked out and he saw poverty and he saw dirt and he saw shopkeepers with no customers and he saw kids playing with old bits of wood. What the woman looked out, same window, what she saw was beauty. So she saw women in gorgeous saris with beautiful hair, with jasmine in it. She saw kids playing cricket and laughing. And she saw tolerance in that society. Same window, just a different way of looking and a different way of being. So I think what India does is it really brings out that sense of connection and personal journey. Alain de Botton has written a brilliant book about the art of travel, and he's just updated it. And he talks about outer journeys facilitating inner ones. And I think that this is a really interesting area. And last year, Mike from Hawaii, who had this slot last year, also talked about kind of this higher purpose that Hawaii has with peace. And I think it's, to a certain extent, it's what you're also seeing with New Zealand with Pure, that this notion, and it's quite a delicate thing when you create great brands and great experiences, but it's almost really understanding what is it? What is this virtue and what is this other benefit from travel? Because simply cutting it as family adventure and romantic weekend is exactly what everyone else is doing. So if you want to get a deeper emotional connection, this is the stuff we have to get comfortable with. This is the kind of thing that kind of might make us bristle a bit, but becomes pretty intoxicating at a personal level when you're traveling. Bhutan, I think, does it brilliantly with happiness as a place. They own a virtue, they deliver on that. And Bhutan is a really interesting place because what they've decided is not to go for high volume, low yield. You know, they border both China and India. They have got to be really careful to preserve their culture. They also don't have the infrastructure delivered to kind of shunt all those people all over their country. They just don't have those systems in place. So they've decided to go down quite a different strategy. It's very expensive to go to Bhutan, and they deliver on this personal virtue, which is happiness. And I'm yet to meet a single person in the world who doesn't want to go to Bhutan. So my challenge is, what is it? What is the purpose that Queensland could satisfy? Do we travel for calm? Do we travel for connection? Is it about family connection? Is it about connecting with other people? Is it about gratitude? Is it about a sense of place? There's lots of different ways of thinking about what virtue, but the founder of Airbnb said, travel is all about who we are when we return. And I was very excited when I heard Stephen speak yesterday, and he talked about, that story about taking his son to the reef, and he said, you can't go to the reef and return as the same person. It's a brilliant and interesting way of thinking about how does Queensland change our soul. And it's a very powerful place to go if you're thinking about the future of the brand and what will bring people here into the future. So the 6 things that we covered were authenticity, sensuality, intimacy, luxury vagabond with that concept of time as the new currency, conscious travel, and purposeful travel. So I think we should write Love Queensland together. There's 2 copies of Love Queensland floating around the room. And these are the questions that I think are worth us asking. How do you discover, curate, and celebrate authenticity? Let me put your feet to the fire on authenticity. How do you express the sensuality of your destination and of your brand? How do you embrace time as the real currency? So that time is in the planning stage as well as the execution stage and the follow-up. How do you make it really time efficient to plan and have an amazing experience? And how do you connect with both conscious and purposeful travel? I think if we do those things, then you start shifting the dial from liking Queensland to loving Queensland, and that's the thing that gets the conversion rate up. Thank you very much.